AITA for divorcing my wife after she secretly gave my bonus to her sister? I'm Max, 38, and Claire and I had been together for 12 years and married for 9. For most of that time, I believed we were good at the unglamorous parts of marriage. We remembered each other's appointments. We knew which groceries the other person would forget. We could tell from the sound of a cabinet closing whether the other one had a bad day. Every Sunday night, I sat at the kitchen table with a yellow legal pad and wrote down the coming week's payments. Mortgage, insurance, utilities, credit cards. Claire used to tease me for doing it by hand when we had a perfectly good spreadsheet, but she also liked never being surprised by a bill. She would drop unopened mail beside my chair and say, "Finance department," before pouring herself a glass of water. I would say, "Your request has been received." It was a stupid little routine, but it was ours. I was never against helping family. Claire's family had needed help more than once, and I had usually been the person who said yes. What I hated was being told that generosity only counted when someone else chose the amount, deadline, and recipient for me. Claire's younger sister, Jenna, was 31 and had been living through a series of temporary emergencies for most of the time I knew her. There was the car repair that was supposed to be paid back after tax season. Then the rent shortage that would be repaid when Derek's overtime kicked in. Then a security deposit, a dental bill, and a credit card that Jenna said she had only used because the interest-free period was about to expire. The stories were always believable. That was part of the problem. Jenna wasn't lazy. She worked. Derek worked. They weren't reckless in every area of their lives. They were simply the kind of people who treated future money as if it had already arrived and other people's savings as if they were standing by for emergencies. At first, I helped without keeping track. Then I started noticing that repayments came in small bursts and stopped the moment asking about them became uncomfortable. After one loan, Jenna sent us $150 for 3 months, then nothing. When I brought it up, Claire said, "She's embarrassed. Don't make it worse." I answered, "It isn't a loan if nobody is allowed to mention repayment." Claire didn't like that. She said I made family relationships sound like business transactions. Maybe I did. But by then, I had a private note on my phone listing dates and amounts. I told myself I wasn't holding a grudge. I was just keeping facts straight. The truth was less flattering. I had moved on emotionally about as much as a person moves on while maintaining a running total. Still, Claire and I rarely fought about our own finances. We had a joint account for household expenses and separate personal accounts for discretionary spending. Our paychecks funded the joint account according to an arrangement we had used for years. Larger decisions were discussed together. At least I thought they were. The bonus had been mentioned at work for months, but I didn't know the final number until I received the direct deposit notice. After taxes, it would be $46,200. I stared at the amount twice before I believed it. That night, I brought home takeout from a place Claire liked. We ate at the kitchen island with the containers open between us, and I showed her the deposit notice on my phone. She smiled and hugged me. $46,000 after tax? $46,200. That's incredible. We had been talking about reducing a high-interest balance, rebuilding the emergency fund after a major repair, and finally replacing part of the flooring we had postponed twice. We sat there for almost an hour working through rough numbers. I suggested putting $20,000 toward debt, $15,000 into emergency savings, setting aside money for the flooring, and leaving the rest untouched until we decided on a longer-term plan. Claire nodded as I wrote it on the yellow pad. "We should do something fun too," she said. "Something within reason. You always add that part. Because you always remove it." She laughed, and so did I. The next morning, I sent her a simple allocation summary. Nothing formal, just the amounts we had discussed. She replied with a heart and wrote, "Looks good." 2 nights later, while I was rinsing dishes, Claire said, "I need to ask you something before you get too attached to that plan." I turned off the faucet. She told me Jenna was more stressed about the pregnancy than she had admitted. There were medical costs, unpaid leave, baby furniture, a stroller, and possibly a larger car. I asked how much they needed. Claire said the bonus would solve all of it. I thought I had misheard her. The whole bonus. It would give them breathing room. What is $46,000 supposed to pay for? She leaned against the counter and folded her arms. "I just told you." "No, you named categories. I'm asking for numbers." Claire's expression changed. Not anger yet. More like disappointment that I had failed a test I didn't know I was taking. Jenna should not have to send you receipts while she's pregnant. I didn't ask for receipts. I asked what the money is for. You always do this. Do what? You make people prove they deserve help. I dried my hands and sat at the table because I could feel the conversation slipping away from the actual question. Where is Derek's contribution? They're married, Max. It's their money. That's exactly why I'm asking. What are they paying, and what gap are we covering? Claire's voice sharpened. They are scared. I believe that. I'm still not giving anyone $46,000 without a budget. It's not just your money. That sentence stayed in the room between us. The bonus was earned through my job, but I understood what she meant. We were married. Our financial decisions affected both of us. I had never treated every dollar I earned as untouchable personal property. But shared money didn't mean either spouse could give away almost all of it alone. I said, then it is also not just your money. Claire looked away. I offered a compromise. Up to $5,000 toward verified medical costs and essential baby expenses. We could pay providers or vendors directly. If the actual need was larger, Jenna and Derek could show us the numbers, and we would discuss it. Claire stared at me as if I had offered $5. Direct payment? Yes. You want to supervise what a pregnant woman buys? I want to know whether we are paying a hospital bill or a vehicle down payment. The car is part of preparing for the baby. Then show me the numbers. You always need a receipt before you can care. That is not fair. It is exactly what you're doing. I told her my answer to giving away the full bonus was no. Not maybe. Not convince me later. No. To avoid another argument about what I had said, I sent Claire a text from the next room. I wrote, I am willing to contribute up to $5,000 for documented medical expenses or essential baby items. I am not agreeing to transfer the full bonus or any amount close to it. She read it, but didn't reply. The following afternoon, my phone began buzzing with messages from Claire's family group chat. Diane, Claire and Jenna's mother, wrote, a decent husband does not make a pregnant woman perform poverty for help. Jenna wrote, I never wanted this to become a family fight. Diane answered, you did nothing wrong. Claire had forwarded part of our conversation. She included my request for an itemized list, but not the part where I offered $5,000. Ethan, Claire's cousin by marriage, sent me a private message. Did you really refuse to help at all? I sent him the full text. He replied a minute later. That is not what I was told. I posted the complete message in the group chat and wrote, I will not debate a version with the middle removed. Then I muted the conversation. Claire came home angry. You embarrassed Jenna. I corrected a lie. No one lied. You left out the offer. Because it was insulting. That doesn't make it non-existent. We slept facing opposite directions that night. Over the next week, Claire acted almost normal. That was what made me question whether I had overreacted. She made coffee in the morning. She asked whether I wanted anything from the store. She sat beside me while we watched a show, though there was a careful space between us. Then she began asking odd banking questions. One night she asked, do you know what the daily transfer limit is? I looked up from my phone. For what? I'm comparing savings accounts. What savings account requires you to know our transfer limit? She shrugged. I'm just asking. Another time she asked whether adding a new external account required a verification code. I asked why. She said, you're acting suspicious over a basic question. A note appeared on our shared tablet a few days later. It said, $25K daily, recipient hold. When I asked about it, Claire said she had been looking at money market accounts and forgot to delete the note. I didn't believe her, but I also didn't change the account access. That was my mistake. Part of me thought changing passwords would be dramatic and controlling. Part of me didn't want to admit I was considering protecting money from my own wife. And part of me still believed that an explicit no between spouses meant something even when the other person hated it. The bonus arrived on a Monday morning. The direct deposit alert showed $46,200 after tax. Claire texted me, congratulations again. I know how hard you worked. I replied, thank you. That evening, I moved $4,400 to cover an upcoming obligation we had already discussed. The remaining $41,800 stayed in the account while I scheduled the first debt payment. For 3 days, nothing happened. Then, on Thursday evening, I was sitting in the living room while Claire folded laundry on the couch. My phone lit up with an external transfer notification. $41,800. Recipient, Jenna. Memo, Jenna Family Support. For a few seconds, I honestly thought it had to be a pending request or some kind of error. The number was too exact. It was every dollar left from the bonus. I walked into the room and held up the phone. Tell me this is pending. Claire folded a towel in half, then in half again. It went through this morning. I stared at her. What did you do? She put the towel on the stack. I transferred the money to Jenna. I told you no. You were never going to come around. So you took it? I used shared money to help my sister. You used access I trusted you with after I told you no. Lower your voice. Has she spent any of it? Claire hesitated for less than a second. She put down a deposit on a safer vehicle. That was when I knew the transfer hadn't happened that morning on impulse. She already knew what Jenna had purchased. I demanded that she call Jenna and request the money back. Claire said, "That's not happening." I hit my palm against the kitchen counter. The sound was louder than I intended. Claire flinched, and I hated that she did. I stepped back immediately. I should not have done that, I said. But you are calling her now. No. Claire. She needs the money more than we do. You do not get to decide that alone. You are acting like I stole from you. What word would you prefer? Her face hardened. There. That is why I didn't tell you. You make everything sound criminal when people are scared. I pushed my chair back so quickly it scraped across the floor. Do not change the subject. Call Jenna. Claire crossed her arms. You will get over this. Something in me went very still. Not because she transferred the money. I was already furious about that. Because she believed the end of the story had already been decided. She would take it, her family would call me cruel, and eventually I would absorb the loss because that was what I had always done. I took screenshots of the transfer, including the date, amount, recipient, and memo. Then I called the bank. The representative I spoke to was named Melissa. Her voice was calm in a way that made me feel both better and worse. I told her a large transfer had been made from an account holding my bonus and that I had not authorized it. She asked whether my credentials had been compromised. I said my wife knew the login information and had access to the household dashboard. Melissa paused before explaining that a transfer made with valid credentials was not always treated the same as an outside account takeover. She could document the dispute, place security restrictions, and begin a review, but she could not promise an immediate reversal. Was the recipient newly added? I asked. I can see an enrollment date, she said. The external account was added 14 days ago. 14 days. That was before Claire formally asked me for the money. I wrote the date on the yellow pad. Melissa helped me reset credentials, enable new two-factor authentication, and review the contact information on the account. She also explained that transfer limits and recipient holds were bank controls, not proof of whether the transfer was legally permitted between spouses. I opened a case and requested copies of the relevant records. When the call ended, Claire was standing in the doorway. You called the fraud department on me? I called the bank about a transfer I refused. You were trying to get me in trouble. I'm trying to stop $41,800 from disappearing. It is not disappearing. It is helping Jenna. Then why was her account added 2 weeks before you asked me? Claire's face changed. Not guilt exactly. More like she had just realized I had access to a clock she forgot existed. She said, I knew you would make this difficult. That doesn't answer the question. I was preparing options. You built the route before you asked for permission. She left the room without responding. Our shared household inbox contained bank alerts, insurance notices, vendor confirmations, and account statements. I searched the date Melissa had given me and found the recipient enrollment email. The nickname entered for Jenna's account was Baby Registry Final. I printed the message. Then I began reviewing older statements. I didn't hack anything. I didn't guess passwords or open accounts that were solely in Claire's name. I looked through records available in the shared inbox and accounts I already had lawful access to. That was enough. Over the previous year, there had been 11 smaller transfers to Jenna totaling $7,850. The memo lines were vague. Groceries, gift, household adjustment. 2 of the transfers were followed by smaller payments coming back from Jenna within days. The amounts were strange. $430, $610, $385. At first, I assumed partial repayments. Then I compared the dates to Claire's personal card payments, which had occasionally appeared in the shared inbox because the card issuer used our household email for alerts. The return payments lined up with minimum payment dates. I created a timeline. I hated myself a little while doing it. Claire and I weren't businesses under audit. We were supposed to be married. But every time I felt ashamed for investigating, I remembered her saying I would get over it. The shared tablet provided the next piece by accident. A message preview appeared from Diane while I was using the tablet to pull up an insurance document. It read, "Once the money is attached to the baby, he won't make you take it back." I didn't open the full conversation. I photographed what was already visible, including the date and sender. Beside the message preview was a recently saved image of Jenna's routing information. I stopped looking after that. Not because I had enough evidence. Because I was angry enough to do something stupid. The next morning, I called a family law attorney named Rachel Patel. I chose her because a co-worker had used her during a separation and said she didn't encourage dramatic gestures. Rachel listened without reacting much, which was strangely painful. My marriage sounded smaller when reduced to account titles, access permissions, and transfer dates. She asked whether I had emptied any joint accounts. No, do not. She asked whether I had cut off money for household expenses. No, do not. She asked whether I knew of any undisclosed debts. I didn't think so. She said, "Do not try to win a divorce before one exists. Preserve records. Protect future income in a lawful way. Continue ordinary household obligations. And do not assume the bank must reverse the transfer simply because you did not agree with it. Account ownership and state law matter." I asked whether one financial betrayal was enough to file. Rachel said, "That is not a legal question." I knew what she meant. She told me what documents to gather and warned me not to threaten anyone, publish private information, or take money from joint accounts in retaliation. I left her office with a list and a sick feeling in my stomach. I had gone in asking how to protect myself. I came out realizing I was already planning for the end of my marriage. That night, I asked Claire in writing to disclose every account and debt in her name. She came into the kitchen holding her phone. "What is this?" "A request for full financial disclosure." "You sent it like I'm an employee." "I sent it in writing because verbal conversations keep changing." "You already called a lawyer, didn't you?" I didn't answer immediately. She laughed once, but there was no humor in it. "Unbelievable. What debt are you hiding?" "I am not doing this with you." "Every account, Claire. You don't get to interrogate me." "I'm not asking why you felt justified. I'm asking for every account." She told me I was controlling and walked away. The next day, I found the hidden card through the payment pattern. Again, I didn't access an account that was not mine. A card balance notice had been sent to the shared inbox months earlier and archived. The balance was $9,600. Once I had the issuer and last four digits, the circular transfers made sense. Claire had been sending money to Jenna under vague labels. Jenna would return smaller amounts near Claire's due dates. It allowed Claire to cover the card without a direct payment appearing where I usually reviewed household activity. After the bonus transfer, Jenna sent $9,600 to the card issuer. I stared at that payment for a long time. The pregnancy request was real. Jenna had real expenses. But the transfer had also been used to erase Claire's secret debt. When I confronted Claire, she didn't deny it. She sat at the kitchen table, both hands around a mug she wasn't drinking from. "I was going to tell you. When it was under control. It is paid off with money you gave your sister after I said no. I hid it because I knew how you would react." "You mean accurately?" "You would have made me feel irresponsible. You carried nearly $10,000 in debt for over a year and used your pregnant sister to route payments. She offered to help. You sent her our money so she could send it back to you." Claire looked down. I said, "Was the entire pregnancy request built around paying this card?" "No." "How much was actually for Jenna?" "I don't know every detail." "You transferred $41,800 and you don't know what it was for." "She needed flexibility." "I asked for a number. You gave me a moral lecture." Her face tightened. "You always have to win. I am trying to find out where the money went. And I am telling you that people were scared." "No. You were telling me why you think being scared made my answer irrelevant." That line was too sharp, but I meant it. Claire began telling family members that I had cut her off financially. I had not. The mortgage, utilities, groceries, insurance, and shared bills remained funded. I did remove her as an authorized user from a personal credit card in my name after Rachel confirmed I could do so. I canceled non-essential recurring charges on that card, including a family weekend Claire had booked without mentioning it. I redirected future income to a new personal account only after legal advice. From there, I continued transferring enough for normal household expenses. Claire had access to her own income and personal accounts. She was not stranded or unable to buy necessities. But Max removed me as an authorized user from his personal card after I moved $41,800 against his express refusal. Didn't sound as useful as Max cut me off. Diane called me. You are proving Claire was right to fear your reaction. My reaction is not the reason she hit a debt. A decent husband does not financially punish his wife for helping family. I have not stopped paying a single shared obligation. You took her card. It was my personal card. You are splitting hairs while Jenna is pregnant. No, do not put the baby in the sentence where your transfer belongs. Diane went silent. Then she said, money comes back. Family does not. I answered, then your daughter should have thought about that before deciding my no did not count. I ended the call. Later, I regretted the way I said it, but not the point. I contacted Jenna directly. She answered on the fourth ring. Her voice was cautious. Claire said I should not talk to you without her. I am asking you to return the transfer. I can't return all of it. How much is left? Most. How much? A pause. I don't know exactly. You received $41,800 3 days ago. The vehicle deposit was time-sensitive. So was the resort. Another pause. What resort? Do not do that. She exhaled. It is a prenatal trip. Derek and I planned it before things get harder. Paid for with my bonus. Claire said it was family money. Claire saying I would calm down is not consent. I knew you had not said yes yet. There it was. Not a misunderstanding. Not Claire telling Jenna I had approved it. Jenna knew I had not agreed. She continued, I thought you would once you understood. You knew what my answer was. That is why nobody called me. The car was not a toy. We needed more room. What is wrong with your current car? It is too small for all the baby equipment. You are having one baby, not opening a daycare. The moment the words left my mouth, I knew they were unnecessarily cruel. Jenna started crying. I closed my eyes and rubbed my forehead. That was harsh, I said. I'm angry, and I should not have said it that way. But I am still asking for the money back. She said, you don't understand what it feels like to be afraid you won't be ready. I understand fear. I do not understand treating my savings as the first option while protecting yours. She went quiet. That told me enough to ask the next question. How much do you and Derek have saved? That is private. So is my bonus. She hung up. I sent a written repayment demand afterward. No threats. No insults. Just the amount, date, account information, and request for return. I also asked for receipts showing how the money had been used. Jenna sent a folder of selective receipts 2 days later. The genuine medical and essential baby expenses totaled about $4,100. There were prenatal invoices, a crib, a car seat, and a few other necessary items. I didn't dispute those. I had offered to help with exactly that kind of cost from the beginning. The rest came out through separate records. A dealership financing email showed an $18,500 vehicle deposit. A card statement showed $6,200 used to clear Jenna's credit card balance. A travel confirmation showed $3,400 for a prenatal resort package with an upgraded room. And $9,600 had gone to Claire's hidden card. The numbers added up exactly. Another financing document referenced the savings Jenna and Derek planned to preserve for future housing goals. They had money. They didn't want to use it. I sent Jenna a revised proposal. I would temporarily leave $4,100 untouched for documented prenatal and essential baby costs if the rest was returned immediately. Everything would be put in writing. She refused because canceling the vehicle deal might cost part of the deposit. I replied, prenatal care did not require an upgraded resort room. She didn't answer. Claire continued insisting that I was turning a family crisis into litigation. I told her, you turned a disagreement into a transfer. I am responding to what you actually did. She asked whether I still loved her. That question landed harder than all the accusations. I did love her. I loved the person who used to leave mail beside my chair and steal fries from my plate. I loved the person who sat with me in hospital waiting rooms and remembered the anniversary of my father's death without being reminded. I loved the woman I had planned to grow old with, but I no longer trusted her around money, truth, or conflict. And every time she explained herself, she focused on why her choice had felt necessary, not on what it meant that she had planned around my refusal. I told her, love is not the part one am confused about. She cried then. I did not. I think that made her believe I had become cold. The truth was that I had reached the point where every emotion felt dangerous unless I put it somewhere orderly. So I built a folder. Bank records. The recipient enrollment date. The transfer limit questions. The message preview from Diane. The older transfers. The hidden card notice. The receipts. The payment breakdown. My original $5,000 offer. I saved screenshots with dates and full context. I didn't post anything online. I didn't contact Claire's employer or embarrass Jenna publicly. Then Diane invited us to dinner. She called it a private resolution. Claire told me I had to attend if I wanted to save the marriage. Ethan warned me privately that Diane expected me to apologize and restore Claire's access to my card. I asked, does everyone think I agreed to the transfer? He said, I don't know what everyone thinks. I know what they've been told. I agreed to go. I brought the folder. On the drive there, Claire asked, are you really bringing paperwork to dinner? If everyone is coming to judge me, everyone gets the same record. You are planning to humiliate me. I am planning to correct the story. You care more about being right than about us. I looked out the window. I wish being wrong would fix this. At Diane's house, the table was already set. Jenna and Derek were there. Ethan and his wife were there. Diane had cooked a large meal, which made the whole thing feel more normal and more absurd. For the first 15 minutes, everyone pretended we were there to eat. Diane asked about work. Ethan's wife commented on the food. Derek barely spoke. Jenna looked tired and avoided my eyes. Then Diane put down her fork. We need to stop this before it destroys the family. I said nothing. She continued. Max, whatever disagreement you and Claire had, Jenna should not be threatened during her pregnancy. I sent a written repayment request. That is a threat when you know she cannot pay it. She received the money less than 2 weeks ago. Claire cut in. He has also cut me off. I looked at her. She held my gaze. I said, the mortgage is funded. Utilities are funded. Groceries, insurance, and shared obligations are funded. You have your income and your accounts. You removed me from the card. My personal card. Diane said. You are controlling the finances to punish her. I asked Claire. Did I agree to transfer $41,800 to Jenna? Claire looked toward her mother. Answer the question. You agreed Jenna needed help. That is not what I asked. You said you would contribute up to $5,000 for documented medical or essential expenses. Diane interrupted. She is carrying your wife's niece or nephew. She should not have to beg. I opened the folder but didn't remove anything yet. Did I approve the transfer? Claire said, not in those exact words. Ethan leaned forward. Did Max approve it or not? Claire's face flushed. He knew I felt strongly. That is not approval, Ethan said. Diane snapped. This is a marriage, not a courtroom. I said, then stop putting me on trial. Jenna finally spoke. Every dollar was for preparing for the baby. I looked at her. Every dollar? She looked down. Claire said, do not interrogate her. Then show me the message where I said yes. No one spoke. Diane lifted her chin. Even if you did not agree at first, money is replaceable. Family is not. I shoved my chair back and hit my palm against the table. Glasses rattled. Everyone went silent. I immediately pulled my hand back. I should not have done that, I said. My voice was shaking. But stop putting an unborn child between me and what 3 adults chose to do. Diane stared at me. I continued, quieter now. I can be angry and still be accurate. I opened the folder. The first page was the recipient enrollment confirmation. Jenna's account was added 14 days before Claire formally asked me for the bonus. Claire said, I told you I was preparing options. I placed the next page down. Here are the questions about transfer limits and verification. Then the screenshot of Diane's message. Here is Diane saying that once the money was attached to the baby, I would not make anyone return it. Diane's face went white, then red. You had no right to go through private messages. It appeared on our shared tablet. I photographed what was visible. You were spying. No. I was finding out why $41,800 disappeared after I said no. I handed copies of the timeline to Ethan and Derek. I didn't read every message aloud. I didn't need to. The dates did most of the work. Claire said, the money still supported Jenna. I removed the spending breakdown. $4,100 went to documented medical and essential baby expenses. Jenna said, that is not the only preparation a baby requires. $18,500 went toward a larger vehicle. We needed it. $6,200 paid your credit card. Jenna looked at Derek. $3,400 paid for a resort package and upgraded room. Diane said, a prenatal trip is not a crime. I did not say it was. I said I did not agree to pay for it. Then I placed the final statement on the table. $9,600 went back through Jenna to pay Claire's hidden card. The room went still. Claire whispered, Max. I looked at her. You told them? You told them I was financially abusing you. That was private. So was the debt. So was the transfer. You made both of them evidence in a story where I was the villain. Diane looked at Claire. What card? Claire's eyes filled. It got out of hand. How long? Ethan asked. Claire said nothing. I answered, more than a year. She turned on me. You did not have to say that. You did not have to tell everyone I cut you off. Derek cleared his throat. We did have savings. Jenna looked at him sharply. He continued, not enough to cover everything and still keep our plans intact. Ethan said, what plans? Derek rubbed the back of his neck. A future house. So you used Max's bonus to preserve your house savings? Ethan asked. Jenna said, we were trying not to start over. Ethan looked at her for a long moment. I loaned you money 2 years ago because you said you were starting over then. Jenna's face changed. I had not known that. Diane said, this is getting ugly. Ethan answered, it was already ugly. We were just missing the numbers. Claire pushed back from the table. You are all acting like I did this for myself. I tapped the hidden card statement. You did, partly. I was trying to protect everyone. From what? From panic. From debt. From Jenna feeling like she had nothing ready. From you turning every mistake into a permanent judgment. I leaned back. You were not asking me to help Jenna. You were asking me to pretend I had agreed after you removed the choice. That is not fair. You planned around the idea that my refusal would not count. Claire began crying. Diane reached for her hand. I didn't feel triumphant then. Not really. I felt tired. But I would be lying if I said there was no satisfaction in watching the false story collapse. For a few minutes, I enjoyed it. I enjoyed seeing Ethan understand. I enjoyed Diane having no clean answer. I enjoyed Claire being forced to sit beside the dates. That feeling embarrassed me later. At the table, Ethan said, being able to afford a loss does not make it voluntary. Diane replied, he can recover. Jenna has a baby coming. I said, I offered to leave the documented medical amount in place temporarily. They refused to return the rest. Jenna said, the vehicle deposit may be lost. That consequence belongs to the people who made it without my consent. Claire wiped her face. What do you want, Max? For the first time all evening, the room was completely quiet. I reached into the folder and removed the attorney engagement letter. Formal channels will handle the money. Claire stared at the letter. I continued. Rachel is preparing the filing. You are divorcing me? Yes. You are ending 12 years over one decision? No. I am ending it over the planning, the transfer, the hidden debt, the circular payments, and the family campaign afterward. She shook her head. You did not even try counseling. Counseling cannot make me believe you did not do this. It could help us understand why. I understand why. You thought I would surrender. Claire stood so quickly her chair nearly tipped. Diane said, sit down. Claire ignored her and walked outside. I waited a few seconds, then followed. She was standing near the driveway with her arms wrapped around herself. Give me 1 month, she said. For what? Counseling. Full disclosure. Whatever you want. I asked for full disclosure. I was scared. I believe you. She looked at me with surprise, as if she expected me to call her a liar. I said, I believe you were afraid of the debt. I believe you were afraid Jenna would struggle. I also believe you used my trust as the solution. I can fix the debt. The debt is not the only problem. I made one terrible decision. You made a series of decisions and hid each one inside the next. She cried harder. I love you. I love you too. Then why are you doing this? Because loving you does not make me safe with you. She asked again for counseling. I refused reconciliation. I agreed to communicate respectfully about logistics and to attend a structured financial disclosure session if our attorneys recommended it. But I would not use counseling as a waiting room while she tried to convince me the betrayal was really compassion. The fallout was less dramatic than the dinner and more complicated. The bank didn't reverse the full transfer. Because known credentials had been used and the account structure was not simple, recovery depended on documentation, recipient cooperation, and the legal process. Jenna canceled the prenatal resort package. Most of that amount was refunded. Some cash remained and was returned. The dealership would not refund the entire vehicle deposit. Part of it was credited after the purchase was canceled, and part became a disputed loss. The card payments were not easily undone. Under a written temporary arrangement, I left $4,100 designated for documented prenatal and essential baby costs. I did that because those needs were real and because I had offered that help before the transfer. Diane called it proof that I knew Claire had been right. I called it proof that I had never refused to help. Jenna eventually sent me a message. I should have called you. I knew you had not agreed, but Claire said you would understand after everything settled down. I am sorry for how it happened. It was not a complete apology. She still described the problem as how it happened, not what they chose to do. I didn't argue. I replied, please direct future financial communication through counsel. Ethan called and apologized. I came to that dinner thinking you were overreacting, he said. I do not think that anymore. I thanked him. Diane never apologized. She continued telling relatives that I destroyed a marriage over money. Some believed her. Some did not. I stopped trying to correct every version. Claire received the divorce papers during a scheduled logistics meeting with attorneys present. I didn't arrange for service at her job or during a family event. I didn't want another scene. By then, the decision did not need one. She looked at the papers and said, so that's it? I said, that's the filing. You sound like Rachel. I've been told that is not a compliment. For half a second, she almost smiled. Then she looked away. The unresolved money became part of the separation proceedings. I did not recover every dollar. I may never recover all of it. I also had to confront things about myself that were easier to ignore while I was busy proving Claire wrong. I had kept a private list of family loans while claiming I had let them go. I used facts as armor and sometimes as weapons. I hit counters and tables when I felt cornered, and even though I never threatened anyone, I understood why the sound made people flinch. I started working on that. Not because Claire's actions were my fault. They were not. Because I did not want being betrayed to turn me into someone who could only feel safe when every conversation sounded like an audit. The divorce moved forward. Claire and I limited contact to necessary matters. I refused Diane's invitation to a closure dinner. I did not need another room full of people deciding whether my boundary was polite enough to count. I lost money, a marriage, and the comfortable belief that trust could survive without rules. What I got back was smaller but more useful. When I say no now, I no longer stay in the room while someone explains why it should mean yes. If you like the stories, don't forget to leave a comment and support the channel by subscribing. See you in the upcoming stories.